Hey everybody, this is Rustin Rose of Metal Nation and Metalholic, and joining us today, the amazing Kobra Paige of Kobra and the Lotus. How is everything in your world?
Everything is pretty damn exciting, I have to tell you that. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The new album, Prevail, comes out on May 12th, and it's the first of your twin releases, so that's huge.
It is. It really is. It's definitely unconventional, and I really believe that both albums are just as exciting comparatively to each other. So it's nice to finally have something new to release to everyone as well. It's been a long time.
And creating a double record in this climate, the music industry, is no small feat. It's very ambitious. Tell us about how Prevail all sort of came together.
The initial concept for the first idea for the album was when we were in the studio doing the classic rock EP, actually, and we were playing all these songs that we loved and grew up with that mostly had been written in the 70s, and I thought, the next album we should really just get in a space together, isolate ourselves a bit, and write a lot and see what happens when we're in that space with each other and have to organically cultivate some magic. Because as you know, like with the digital world, we can send files back and forth, and it has worked just fine, but I wanted to try something different. So by the time Prevail came around, my dad had planted this crazy seed in my head that we should do a double album. And I thought, that's insane. That's too much material. It's a career suicide kind of thing. But a week later, after thinking about it, I thought, yeah, let's do this. I think that we can do this, and I believe in all of us. I believe in the creativity in the band. So we went in full steam ahead to Denmark with Jacob Hansen, and we came in with a couple ideas, but mostly everything was written in that month that we were in Denmark, or that first month that we were there, which was different and crazy all in itself. That was also including the second album. So we wrote a crap load of material and also really focused on honing into maybe a more evolved sound that represented some of the things that we value, which for me was really making it known that we were from also a newer generation. I don't want our band to be a direct throwback to the music that we have loved and grown up with and were influenced by. So it was learning to take elements that we love, but putting a more fresh impact into it. And I think that's what Prevail has. So there you go. And Brad said, let's call it Prevail, This is a hard career path, and we're prevailing on, and I thought it was great. So that just set the premise for what it was all going to be about.
Well, and you mentioned already you wrote and recorded in Denmark with Jacob. What was that experience like, and how did being over there in Denmark impact?
It was amazing. Process? I mean, we couldn't have gone to a more obscure place, I feel like. We were in Ribe, which is the oldest settlement in Denmark. It's a Viking town, and it's been completely untouched. So all the buildings are tilted and twisting over. There's actual Viking colonies out there that still do mass marriages every year. And it was quite wild. I remember the first day we went into the studio, and Jacob was there with this Danish songwriter, Martin Pegard Wolf, and they were talking in Danish to each other every time we would say something to him, and they wanted to discuss their thoughts around it. They'd first talk in Danish, and we were like, oh my God, what is this going to be like? But it ended up being unbelievable once we got the ball rolling with those guys. And yeah, it was challenging. It was really challenging because we never stopped creating, and it kind of put us in a state of madness, I feel like. I know for myself, I had a few breakdowns because we weren't sleeping either. We were just focusing so hard, but it really created so many new ideas, and it was really exciting. It was a massive learning experience.
Well, and you segued quite nicely, because my next question was going to be, what was the biggest challenge for you in putting all of this together?
Okay. Yeah, the biggest challenge actually was that initial 2 weeks when we had first arrived in Denmark, and we were trying to establish the sound that we were really going for on these next two albums. Like, what was going to be the focus? I knew going there that one thing that was important is not to lose the heavy metal element that people have known and supported us for. And both albums integrate that into many songs, even in the new ones, but there are also several songs that like Hell on Earth, for instance, that are just completely there just so that we don't lose our identity completely. And that first 2 weeks was really tough. We were just discussing what are the ways that we can evolve as a band, what are the ways that we have patterns that we are unable to see anymore because we've been writing in a certain way for so long. These were all things that Jacob brought to our attention. It was crazy. It was like, oh my God, we do our chords like this all the time. And yeah, that is like the way that Iron Maiden goes out of their drum fill in the chorus every single time. Like, we need to break this. We need to start doing some fresh stuff for ourselves, you know? So it was interesting. There was a lot of awareness brought to the table, and that was really scary at first. But after we wrote the first couple songs, we started to get a really good feel for what we were really, really trying to do there.
Well, I loved High Priestess, but you guys have really elevated things with Prevail. I mean, when I put it on, I mean, I knew it was going to be good because it's Kobra and the Lotus, but I put it on and I'm like, holy shit, what have they done here? This is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, you guys also went into this record with probably the most stable lineup that you guys have had in your tenure as a band. How did that impact creating the record?
I think that it made a huge impact, actually. This is something that I've always dreamt of, is having the same lineup that goes on tour with the albums, and people know exactly who put the effort into that album, who played on it, and you can go see it on the road. I think that's so important, and it's something that has been kind of out of our hands just for various reasons. Things have happened, and so it was really nice because we had this sense of camaraderie and also accomplishment and pride. In the end, we can walk out of it and all of us together are like, yeah, we did that together, you know? Like, now let's go bring it to everyone that wants to hear it together. And that's like it's such a good feeling. So I think that it really actually made such a positive influence on the album. And unfortunately, you know, Jake was supposed to be with us as well, and he was supposed to tour, but he was picked up by Iced Earth, and that's a great opportunity. So he's out there on the road with them, and that's that. But we have the four of us, and it feels really good.
Absolutely, and it sounds fantastic. Now, you mentioned at the beginning you had the concept for this record, but the album itself is not a concept record. But to me, in listening to it, and obviously I haven't heard part 2 yet, but it feels like there's an overarching theme at play at some level. It feels like it's sort of a story of the human experience, the human spirit. Am I way off?
You're completely dead on. Yeah. It's interesting because when I think of concept albums, the first thing that comes to my mind personally is like Dream Theater or Seventh Wonder, you know, something where there's this story that's developing based on something through the whole album, and the riffs come back and forth. And so in that way, like you were saying, it's not a typical concept album, but I would consider it its own style of concept album because the theme of the human experience is completely what the whole entire album is about. And it's just about the whole spectrum of what makes a human being with the journey that we go through, hopefully things that we're all able to relate to in some shape or form. And it's consistent in both albums, and it really represents the name of the song. It all comes down to Prevail after everything.
Now, given that, because you've got 2 albums that are coming out separately, how did you choose which tracks to put on each release? I mean, did you always have an idea of the sequencing, or was it an involved process?
That was a really hard process, actually. We didn't have an idea. We had so many songs. We wrote too many songs so that we made sure we, first of all, could stand by every song we were putting on the albums. But we walked out with all the material for 2 records and no idea of what was going to come first. I guess the one song, the only song that we knew was going to come first was Trigger Pulse. And I think the reasoning for that one was because to us it really married the two sounds of Kobra and the Lotus together. It brought together everything we've done before, the heaviness, but also really introduced the new evolution that we were taking a step forward toward. And ironically, like that, I think it's interesting how things go down because that song just really hit off in a way that none of our music has hit before with people, and been the most played song we have ever had to date. So that kind of set the precedent. And then after that, we were like, okay, what goes with Trigger Pulse? What does Napalm think that, what would they like to see? They really wanted to see You Don't Know and Light Me Up on the first record. And they had an idea for the second record for what 2 songs they really wanted to focus on there. So that really helped out with what it was. And then it was just a balancing act. It was like, okay, Hell on Earth is on this album, so we can't, like, let's not put another one that's straight up classic heavy metal on here in that way. Let's put it on the next one, you know?
Right.
They're very well balanced. Both albums have pretty much the same amount of new, old, and evolved Kobra and the Lotus and hard rock and heavy metal. They're very equally balanced out.
Well, and this leads me to what I was going to ask next, because Trigger Pulse itself actually gives an indication of this. You really seem to push yourself into new arenas on this record as a vocalist. What challenged you the most with this album as a singer?
The biggest challenge, personally, you mean?
I mean, you're stretching out on this record into places you haven't been before. So tell us about what was...
That is absolutely true. The first way this came about was actually because Jacob had suggested initially right off the bat, let's drop the songs, let's make them really crunchy, and that will also help to bring you guys a little more of this modern sound you're looking for, and you can utilize that in all your music. It doesn't have to change. And we were like, yeah, you know, we tried one song a little lower and we were like, this is awesome, let's do this. But that meant that the songs for the first time ever were not specifically written for my range and my comfort zones, as I like to say, which is in the chest area where I can keep all my notes in the chest and kind of power through them all. And I was really freaked out about this, actually. But Jacob just really encouraged me and said, no, I've heard your range. You have no problem with doing anything to these songs. You just need to believe in what you can do. And so I did, and it was really cool because I started to realize that it was like a way bigger playing ground for me, and also for the guitarist. Like, it made everything open up for all of us. So the guitars had more room to play, my vocals had more room to play, and then as soon as that happened, it just kind of opened another door of creativity and ways to use different dynamics on the album. And so I think it's actually resulted in an album, a double album that also has the most depth and thoughtfulness out of all of our music before.
I'd agree. From what I've heard, I've only heard the half, obviously. Now, one of my personal favorites on the first album, which seems to change daily, but right now it's Specimen X. Tell us the story.
That's awesome. I have to say that's one of my favorites too. Same for the guys. That one is just, I think, one of the most colorful songs.
And well, tell us a little bit about the story behind that track.
Specimen X is literally about just feeling trapped in your own agony, bringing yourself down in ways that only we are capable of doing to ourselves. And I was feeling this way sometimes in some of the things I was going through in my life. And also, while we were doing the music, I was really, really scared that I was not going to do a good enough job for the bar that I had set for myself for the album. And I put so much pressure on the album, and I feel bad. Like, the guys, they handled that pressure so well, and Yasha was cool as a cucumber. I was not so cool. I remember like not sleeping for 3 days, and I came into the studio and I was like spinning in Jacob's chair, talking at like the speed of light, and just completely freaking out one day, like, how do we know we're doing the right thing, and blah blah. And they're all just staring at me because, first of all, they're guys and I'm a girl, and I'm so emotional sometimes, and no one knew how to handle it. They were like, what do we do here? How do we support this? So yeah, I forget what I was even talking about now. I started talking about the chair, and then I got totally lost. What were we talking about again?
Headed from spinning around. Well, one of the things that I loved most about Specimen X is
Oh yes, Specimen X.
what I got from it when I was listening to it. You want everybody who listens to it to take their own thing away from it. The immediate thing that came to me was, as a drug and alcohol counselor, now parole officer, is the number of people I deal with addiction. And to me, that talks about being stuck in your own personal agony. And I read your recent interview about mental health, and I have an interest in how often that's tied to addiction and how prevalent addiction is in the music industry. And I wanted to get your
Absolutely.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on any of that.
Yeah, I think about this so much every day, actually. And you're right, that just really is, that's wonderful to hear, because Specimen X, that is something that's how it should relate to people in their own way. And also that's exactly at the same time what it's also about, what you said. Anyone can be this Specimen X. And I think that it's really challenging for us to be such chemical creatures as it is. It's really hard with the chemicals that we have going on in our bodies, and there's so much imbalance that's just naturally occurring out there, and it's hard even if you're relatively stable to keep balance in your life. So especially the more I've thought about it, I can really understand how those paths start, where the addiction can start, where the escapism can start, not being able to cope. I don't see many opportunities for a lot of people that are especially mentally ill or experiencing some sort of chemical imbalancing to seek help in any way, because there's just not that infrastructure built up in a lot of our society. And it's sad. It's I don't even know how it would I don't even know how it would begin to be fully helped, but I feel horrible about the fact that there is not that support for people, and it kind of, I see some of the people in my life that I've been influenced by, and I wonder where they would be, without the other people that are in their lives that are helping them seek some support, because they actually don't have the capacity to do that themselves. And there's so many people like that. And so now, even when I see someone that's homeless on the street, it's like, I really wonder what their story is. Like, how did they get there? And did they even have like the mental tools to help themselves out of a dysfunctional spot? Because there are people that can't, and that's not even their fault. That's a deck of cards that was dealt to them genetically, and then it just spirals out of control when they try to help themselves or find some way to escape. Yeah, it's kind of devastating, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, when you have a system like we have here in America, where we have the war on drugs and addiction, we're focused on the criminal aspect of things rather than treatment and getting them help.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so much more deep and profound than that.
Which track grew the most in the studio from where it started to where it ended, when you got the seed for the song and where it finally bloomed? Which one was the biggest difference?
I would have to say, oh man, I'm trying to think of let me just look at the material on that album. I would have to say, actually, it wasn't a one track. It was the first half of Prevail 1, because Light Me Up was one song that we had come into the studio with it already actually created, which was rare for these albums. Mm-hmm. And that was the first sonic step that we had made differently before coming into the studio, but it really helped us show Jacob what we were trying to do. And so there's that song, and then we started to create these songs, Gotham, Trigger Pulse, You Don't Know. Those particularly, those were just such a diversion in a big way, and they really changed everything from there. We were really able to create more of what we were trying to do after those songs were established.
Prevail 1 was originally slated for a bit earlier release. Part 2 was going to come out around October. Will we still get Prevail 2 this year, given that it's coming out later than you planned?
Oh, man. Napalm has been so focused on Prevail 1 that we haven't even discussed what's happening for Prevail 2 yet. I'm guessing with the way things have been going, it's probably going to come out in the very early new year of 2018, just because they've been really careful and they wanted to strategize the best way to release the material as possible, which is really nice for us. We have not had this much effort put into us by a label in our lives. So I think that's what we're looking at, early 2018. But tomorrow our first music video drops for Prevail 1, and that's really exciting.
Which track is it going to be?
It's going to be You Don't Know.
I don't know what it is, or you don't know the song? No.
Oh, yeah, it's hilarious. It's You Don't Know the song.
So you're getting ready to hit the road for a pretty amazing tour with Xandria and Once Human. How much of the new record will you try to play?
We're going to play half the new record. I think that integrating it is still going to be important for these first couple tours, and not leaving people in the dark on the stuff that they have been there for so long. So that's what we're doing. It's going to be really half new, half old. Yeah, I have to say, just because you said it's an exciting tour, and I'm so excited about this tour. I just have a really good feeling, and I can't wait to play with these awesome bands.
Kobra, thanks so much for taking the time to chat about the new album. Prevail comes out May 12th, Part 1. It's fantastic record, so much growth in the band. I love what you're doing. Be safe on the road, enjoy that tour, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk again soon.
Yeah, I sure hope so. Thank you so much for having me again, and sending you guys all the best. We really appreciate all the support.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.